8 years ago, monsters from another dimension began deliberately hunting humans. The survivors called this apocalypse the magical tide for various reasons. However, the tide enabled an awakening for humanity. Choosing a profession and awakening one's talent would determine a professional's destiny. At the first professional academy in Xinyang, an elder congratulates the students. It was a grand day, as they were finishing their theoretical classes and awakening their talents before heading into instances. The elder says he believes they are ready to become professionals, thus defending humanity even if it means sacrificing themselves. The next students to be called by their numbers will have their talents awakened. Here we are introduced to number 1001, Wang Shua, very anxious to receive his talent. The quality of the talents received is divided into 3 ranks: common, rare, and legendary. There is also the subdivine and mythical ranks, which have not been seen since humanity first awakened. The most coveted classes follow this order: swordsman, mage, rogue, summoner, warrior. However, the priestess class is considered mediocre compared to the others. It became a joke class, reduced to standing behind the team gaining XP while doing nothing. A little girl calls out to Mr. Lin. The beautiful pink-haired girl wants to know which class Mr. Lin will choose. The young man replies that it doesn't make sense to say now since it depends on what ability is awakened. The beautiful girl named Tsumu gets very frustrated because she was really curious. Due to her stunning beauty, the girl is very popular among the boys. Lin, noticing her frustration, starts patting her head. The two sing very close to each other. This makes the other students furious because Lin has a bad reputation for being a loser. Juan was eager to see what talent Lin would awaken since he always acts superior, but our dear student Sue scolds him. At that moment, student 1001 had just awakened a rare-ranked talent, which amplifies the power of skills by 50%. The group is impressed, saying it's a great awakened ability for the warrior class. The boy doesn't celebrate right away because something is catching his attention. He wants to know what makes another student the god's favorite. Mumu was clearly not happy about something. She then asks Lin why he doesn't care about other people's opinions. Lin then makes a mysterious expression and prepares to answer. He says the reason is because he will become the strongest. Remembering his past, he says this is the only way. We then see a scene of a couple running from monsters carrying a child. The 3 are fleeing to a shelter that still had its doors open. However, a giant monster was already closing in on them. And then on the verge of being attacked, the creature strikes the group, throwing the man and the child to the ground. While the woman is in the monster's grasp, the man yells for the boy to get into the shelter quickly. The woman says their little baby must survive. The shelter was about to close. On that tragic day, Lin lost his father and mother. A kind woman with pink hair and a little girl offered to become his new family. Lin was then adopted by that family, now with a strong motivation to protect them. Number 1128, student Lin is finally called. He asks his companion Yumi to just wait. She seemed very anxious for this moment. However, Lin exudes a confidence never before seen in the history of humanity. He then prepares to receive his awakened talent. The experience of that moment surprises him, wondering if this is really the place where talents are awakened. He then prepares to grasp an orb with a predominantly green color. Finally, he touches the orb, triggering a reaction. It was as if 2 giant dragons were swirling around him. It seemed like an absurd awakening, a mythical ranked talent. The system asks if he wishes to conceal heaven and earth reversal. When leveled up, this skill can even change the nature of other abilities. Current enhancement effect, mana consumption reduced by 10%. Current conversion effects, buffs become debuffs and debuffs can become buffs. Our MC begins to think of many ways to use this ability. It could make him invincible, but he starts thinking of countermeasures for attacks that aren't abilities. Lin thinks he can't afford to get hurt because damage turns into healing and vice versa. He concludes that this is why talents should be kept secret, and so he did. Lin concealed the talent he received. However, young Mumu was very eager to find out what his talent was. Meanwhile, the group present there accuses him of having received a shameful talent, which is why he wants to hide it. It was now Noom's turn to choose her talent. Lin, not at all delicate, tells her to hurry up. Those who had already chosen their talents now had to go to the statues to select their profession. It was our MC's turn. The statue then asks him to choose his profession. Lin begins to think about the compatibility between his awakened ability and the choice of profession. To cover his weaknesses, he decides to choose the priest class. The statue then asks for confirmation, as this decision is permanent. Moreover, he is the first student from that school to choose priest, but Lin confirms it anyway. Our MC's choice is then confirmed. Thus begins the class change process. Finally, Lin had become a priest. And here we can see the status window of our MC, along with his awakened ability. His profession also granted him 2 skills, healing art and clarity art. He then wants to test these skills together with his awakened ability, heaven and earth reversal. Lin prepares to test his new combo. His sacred staff was emitting a sinister red aura due to the activation of the reversal. And as expected, it was interpreting healing as life reduction. In other words, it had become a true damage ability. Now he begins analyzing the skill clarity, which drains 30 mana from the target. A very important ability for moments when mages want to cast their ultimates. With that, our MC's combat strategy is already formed. He just needs to be careful with allies trying to buff or heal him. Behind him, there was a commotion because no one had ever chosen the priest class there before. But on the other side, our Mumu had awakened a legendary ranked ability, Bionic Tears, an ability that allows summoning monsters from other dimensions. Mumu had the only legendary ranked ability so far. On top of that, she had the highest theoretical scores. Because of this, everyone was very eager to see which class she would choose. Without any hesitation, Mu chooses the mage class. Lin is very happy because a legendary ranked mage has the potential to join the professional alliance. However, what most caught the coordinator's attention was Lin and his choice of priest, because no one would choose such a bad profession considered the class of cowards. But the old man and his team truly believe our MC has a plan. Meanwhile, Mumu, overflowing with happiness, runs to her companion without wasting time. She invites her dear companion to enter an instance together. But unfortunately, Lin ends up rejecting the offer, saying he has other plans. Mumu now wants to know what plans those might be. However, at that moment, the Forest of Wolves instance had just been opened. Students who had just awakened and chosen their professions had to enter this instance. The cocky purple-haired guy made a proposal to our MC, saying he's willing to carry a priest if he convinces Muyu to join his group. Sue instantly refuses, making the guy angry and calling her ungrateful. To calm the students, the old man says they need to work as a team no matter how skilled they are. The group was caught off guard by the appearance of the first instructor. He says that in the presence of demons, all quarrels must be set aside. Lin responds that this is not the case. He just wants to go alone to receive more experience. The first instructor is surprised, asking how a priest could possibly solo an instance. Worried, the old man warns him not to mess with death, but our priest reassures him, saying he knows what he's doing. The MC's plan is to level up quickly by going solo and to hide his awakened ability since it's not strong yet. The extreme confidence Lin exudes makes the old man feel more at ease due to the difficulty. A warning states that it is recommended to enter as a team, but without any hesitation, our MC confirms that he wants to enter solo. He now enters the beginner instance Forest of Wolves. This was a hard-level instance recommended for beginner professionals from level 1 to 3. It's possible to clear this instance without much trouble if the teamwork is decent. In a certain part of the instance, there is a healing point. But for those who wish to challenge the instance by pulling multiple monsters at odds or venture into the depths of the forest in forbidden areas, they will undoubtedly die. But as long as you have a good talent level, it's possible to achieve a satisfying score. So the MC decides to head to the forbidden area, and so he does. Lin was already deep in the forest. Here we could see the attribute status of the wild wolves. The wolf pack then charges toward the MC. Using their skills Bite and Bleed, our reverse healer then prepares to use his ability, performing a healing skill on the pack of enemies in front of him. The wolf is hit directly by the reversed healing, causing 50 points of reverse damage to the wolf, gaining 10 XP in the process. At that moment, another wolf ends up hitting him with a bite, but the animal is instantly repelled, while the damage from its bite was reversed into healing. Right after, Lin prepares to use his next technique, Reverse Clarity Confinement. The wolf is immobilized immediately and loses 30 points of mana. Draining the enemy's mana left it unable to move. Such a result was expected by our MC since low-level monsters without mana are useless. Another wolf then charges at Lin, who dodges the bite at the last second, then performing the healing technique with reversal still active. This way, it was very easy to defeat the enemies, and if things continued like this, reaching level 4 was possible, which would allow him to challenge the secret boss with only one level of difference between them. Another wolf was approaching from behind, but the cooldown of the healing technique had already reset, and Lin fires the reverse healing beam at the wolf, dealing 50 points of damage. The MC had prepared extensively for this day. The battle against the wolf pack had already come to an end, and our hero was recovering, deactivating his reversal ability and restoring his mana and health. Meanwhile, while checking his status, Lin was already at level 2 and had a significant increase in his combat attributes. With the points he received, he decided to invest in intelligence as it was the best choice considering his combat kit. Meanwhile, back at the professional academy, the first instructor recalls warning about the danger of the forbidden area. The old man is very worried about the MC's intent to challenge the descendant of the Wolf King, level 5. He concludes that the MC must have some plan or hidden ability of legendary rank or higher. While the elder was concerned, his friend trying to lighten the mood proposes a bet that Lin will break the record. At the same time, other instructors were observing a girl's performance, saying she lacks firepower and ambitious thoughts. The girl and her group were fighting wolves. That was our dear Mumu using the skill Frost Nova, which eliminated her enemies instantly. But while that wolf was defeated, something caught our dear Mumu's attention. A pair of wolves was charging directly at her, but our heroine Mumu wastes no time and prepares for battle. She steps in front of her group and warns her friends to stay behind her. Then she uses her awakened ability Bionic Tears, creating an after-image of herself, thus allowing her to cast 2 Frost Novas. The job was done and Mumu says they're safe now. The first instructor was happy, but his friend says you can't go far on talent alone. The scene now shifts to another combat area where a very cute bunny was present, watching as a wolf was sent flying right in front of it. Lin had already reached level 3 and was very happy with the results so far. While distributing his points, he heard a noise. However, our MC apparently had already expected this. He then approaches the source of the noise to confirm it with his own eyes. It was indeed the boss of the area, the descendant of the Wolf King. The hidden boss of this instance is referred to as a taboo in the textbooks. Due to the countless casualties and deaths caused by this boss, there was also another issue. Several wolves were surrounding the boss. However, the wolves surrounding it occasionally had to move away from the boss, thus creating perfect opportunities to deal with them. And our MC, no fool, took full advantage of these opportunities. It was a perfect situation for the catastrophic priest, because in addition to dealing with the boss's bodyguards, he was also gaining experience from it. Lin then grabs his stylish staff and starts making his preparations. Finally, our MC had reached level 4. It was the perfect time to challenge the secret boss who had already noticed his presence, but that didn't matter to Lin. This was the moment of truth. The monster lived up to its title as a boss with an obscene amount of health and a high attack stat. However, that meant little to our MC. The boss had pierced through his body with an attack which actually healed him. Lin, full of mockery, even taunts the wolf by thanking it for the healing. It was like watching your allies in a game. Instead of dealing damage, they heal the enemies. The wolf was already tired of trying to attack the NC. Meanwhile, his healing skill was already off cooldown. The catastrophic priest then fires it at the boss, causing a decent amount of damage in the process. The boss tries to counterattack with Crawl Strike. However, our hero dodges that attack immediately. The wolf boss still seemed full of energy, and now the MC suspects that the boss has figured out his technique, but it was already too late. The boss then activates the skill rampage and charges at Lin. However, his healing skill was ready again, so he uses it without hesitation on the boss. Defeating the descendant of the Wolf King granted our MC 1,000 experience points. He was now level 5, and the dungeon was completed, which earned him a lower-tier reward. The spoils from that conquest were spectacular, and for completing the dungeon without taking any damage, he was awarded an SS score. This achievement was announced to the entire academy, leaving all the students stunned by what had just happened. They couldn't contain their excitement, dying to know who achieved such an absurd feat. It was a historic event. Even the first instructor was shocked. There had never been an SSS score in this instance before. His colleagues also thought it was insane because one of the criteria for this achievement was to take 0 damage. Mumu, who had achieved an A-rank score, was confused as she herself had struggled a lot. But Mumu is very sweet and always thinking of her companion. She was more worried about Lin at that moment. Little did she know it was him who had accomplished that feat. Meanwhile, the MC was trying to open the treasure chest. Upon opening it, he obtained a silver-tier skill book, Divine Healing, 5 attribute points, and the item Shadow Dagger. The treasures were then transferred to Lin. The MC examines the stats of his new acquisition. He also wastes no time checking the new skill from the book, Divine Healing. He then uses the book, learning this new area of effect healing skill. Combining it with his reversal ability, Divine Healing would have a catastrophic effect. The only downside is its very high cooldown and mana cost, but that doesn't matter because it's still the best damage skill among beginners. Combined with his Clarity ability, he had already surpassed the mage class in power. As for the dagger, he considers selling it. He no longer wants to rely on his adoptive family's money. Not to be overlooked, the 5 attribute points the MC received are also incredible, as that's an extremely rare reward from the system. The Conquest reward was also boosted due to the SS rating. Distributing the 5 points into intelligence, Lin intends to become a priest with catastrophic attack power. Outside, everyone was eager to see which team had achieved the triple S score. The excitement was huge, and everyone started to get confused as only Lin came out of the portal. But they still had no idea that it was our MC who had made that extraordinary score. However, Mu knew it had been him. But the arrogant boys group told Mumu there was no way a solo player could have done it. Lin interrupts them, asking if any assassins are interested in a high-quality dagger. Everyone there is stunned to see that Lin has a silver-tier piece of equipment, and the interested buyers quickly start placing their bids. A bid of 50,000 catches Lin's attention, so he gets ready to close the deal by doing a countdown. At that moment, a girl slams down and doubles the offer. It was an extraordinary amount. Extraordinary, considering the average income of a normal family was a tenth of that value. Our MC thinks that even though the offer is extremely high, the dagger is worth the price. After all, it's a premium item. Lin then starts gaining popularity with the crowd, who are now curious about his level. Everyone is hyped to learn he's already level 5 and curious how he soloed a dungeon. Meanwhile, the instructors don't want to believe that he actually soloed a dungeon because it's impossible for a student to achieve an SS score alone. After all, the requirement was to complete the dungeon solo without taking damage, impossible even for top-tier professionals at the beginner stage. All the excitement surrounding Lin makes the purple-haired guy extremely stressed. He couldn't believe a mere priest had achieved such a feat. The grumpy elder thinks it must have been luck or cheating. With the test concluded, the old man then announces that the students had officially become trainee professionals, and that in 30 days, all of them would experience the most important moment of their professional lives. A future where they could become ordinary people or extraordinary heroes fighting for humanity against the demonic waves. Depending solely on each person's performance and the proper use of low-level instances, this new upcoming test has one important requirement for completion: team cooperation. And the MC had already thought of the perfect person to be part of his team. Although she seems beautifully out of reach, Mumu is far too kind and can be easily tricked, so our MC feels responsible for protecting her. Besides, our hero made a promise to his aunt to protect Mumu. He says he's thinking of skipping dinner to head to the desert dungeon. The dungeon he was referring to was called Stone Cave, and just as he had planned, our duo was there. Where it was possible to choose between 2 difficulty levels, Lin decides to enter the dungeon on hard mode. The higher the difficulty, the higher the monster stats, but the greater the rewards. Usually beginner dungeons have 3 difficulty levels, but Stone Cave only has 2. Mu gets worried about the risk of challenging the dungeon on hard mode for the SS score. Lin tries to calm her down, but Sue says it might not be possible for her to avoid taking any damage. However, RNC says he knows a trick called skip class in this dungeon. Mumu recognizes the term, which is used when you skip past monsters. Lin explains that according to his research in this specific dungeon, skipping monsters is viable. Mumu was amazed by the weight and deduction skills of her companion, but Sue had a certain idea of his capabilities as she always saw Lin studying the instances. Still, others always thought he was an easy target for bullying. Mumu was lost in her thoughts, and the MC calls her attention. Caught off guard, she snaps out of it and says she's coming. The two finally entered the dungeon, which had an incredible crystal-filled atmosphere. Mumu was fascinated by its beauty, while Lin warned her to stay alert. Unexpectedly, the dungeon system detects a small party and decides to match them with another team, and that catches Lin by surprise. He didn't know the dungeon could do that. This was bad because now there could be competition. The moment he finished that sentence, an explosion took them by surprise. Apparently, another group was struggling. A purple-haired guy had been thrown against the wall with incredible force. He was clearly in a very tough spot. The group had been caught off guard by how hard the dungeon was on hard mode. The monsters had their stats boosted and gained new abilities at this level. That group finally notices our dynamic duo arriving right behind them. The arrogant guy, as always, demands Lin's help immediately. But our MC, ice cold, tells him to defend himself. So Ardu leaves, letting the other group deal with it on their own. Lin reminds Miss Mu that scorpions are afraid of water and are close-range fighters. He then asks her to follow his instructions. Mu agrees, and our MC says there's one more thing, that the monsters are very sensitive to sound. While charging at the enemy, Lin begins to perform a technique called ride. Mu, witnessing it, is astonished and asks if that's his awakened talent. The priest with a mysterious air asks her not to make too much noise. He explains that to avoid the monsters, it's necessary to follow certain paths without attracting their attention. After that, they need to look for a bug in the dungeon. Finally, our duo arrives at the water area that Lin wanted to reach. He then asks Mumu to jump in with him. She makes a serious face and thinks for a moment, but ends up following Lin's lead. The two then dive into the well until they reach the other side. It was apparently a secret path. Lin, who was analyzing a rock, prepares to do something. He starts hitting the ground, making a lot of noise that obviously draws the attention of a bunch of monsters. Our MC apparently has a plan. Meanwhile, back where the other team was fighting a giant monster, the sudden change in monster behavior catches the group's attention. The monsters begin to ignore that team and head in a different direction. That was the area where our group was making noise with that rock. He had even drawn the attention of the dungeon boss, the Poison Scorpion King. We now see the stats of that boss, level 6. This was a situation coldly calculated by Lin. He had expected the dungeon boss to show up like that, and that the scorpions wouldn't be able to cross the water. Lin then takes the opportunity to prepare his attack, clearing hordes of scorpions in the process. With all those eliminations, our group was gaining a lot of experience. Witnessing the scene, the group begins to realize that this was the person who broke the record. Mumu wasn't far behind and, in a graceful way, activates her awakened ability to help Lin, managing to take down other hordes of scorpions as well. With all those kills, the student Su Mumu had already reached level 4. She's very impressed by how quickly she leveled up. We are then shown the status window of our dear Momu. After clearing the smaller monsters, Lin warns that now it's time to face the boss. And living up to its title, the Scorpion King was able to ignore the water restriction. Our group couldn't waste time, so they began their attack. However, Mumu was quite worried because her ice spell was only dealing 10 damage. Our MC reassures her, saying it's possible to bypass its defense by targeting the core on its abdomen. The boss have finally reached our group's range. Lin performs a counterattack while dodging the scorpion's charge. He improvises a temporary base for the two of them and asks Mumu to take care of that part. Our hero then fires off an attack using his ride technique, inflicting 150 damage. However, the boss still had a lot of health. The boss then prepares a counterattack. Our healer immediately asks Mumu to execute the preparations. She then starts using her ice spell. Meanwhile, Lin draws the monster's attention, prompting it to perform an attack that exposes its core. Seizing the opportunity, he launches a strike dealing a critical hit of 1,000 damage. Mumu, seeing that, is extremely impressed. The Scorpion boss had been defeated, granting their group 3,000 experience points. And all the challenges of the dungeon had been completed, awarding the group their rewards. With that, our MC had leveled up again. Mumu had a very proud expression, and behind them was Wang's group. Amazingly, they had suddenly become humble. But Lin only demands that they keep what happened today a secret. Our NC doesn't want them to talk too much. Just that. Otherwise, that bunch of idiots will face the consequences. Our dynamic duo was now in a teleport space with some privacy, which meant they could now view the rewards from the dungeon challenge. The eyes of our dear Moo Moo sparkled with excitement over the rewards, which were Skill Book Poison Bubble, Item Wen Boots, Divine Rank, Item Hunting Sword, Silver Rank, and Item Emerald Ring, Silver Rank. Nu was stunned to learn that they gained 5 status points, finally understanding why the MC is so strong. Here we get detailed information about the hunting sword for the Great Swordsman class. We also have the wind boots with great mobility stats. The skill book Poison Bubble is for the mage class. And finally the Emerald Ring, which gives 10% cooldown reduction. The group is impressed with the loot, but what catches Lin's attention most is the ring. Even though it's silver rank, it gives cooldown reduction, which is an extremely valuable stat that could be worth millions. Lin offered the skill book to Mumu, but she says she's currently using ice. Mumu explains that she can't use other elements since she's already made her stat allocation. But at that moment, a hidden talent is activated, Master of the 5 Elements. This leaves Mumu very confused. She had no idea something like that was possible. But Lin tells her that if something like this happened, she should start collecting books from different elements. Our MC says that this hidden talent could be a trump card that sets her apart from other mages. As they leave the dungeon, Mumu asks Lin what he thinks about allocating her points into guidance. Lin responds that it's a personal decision for each of them, and Mumu accepts the answer. Outside, some groups were discussing whether to enter the dungeon. There was our duo just arriving at the location. As expected, Mumu's popularity draws attention, leaving the boys drooling. However, Lin was also becoming quite famous for his achievements. This was sparking a lot of conversation among the student professionals. While everyone was chatting, someone made a dramatic entrance in a Lamborghini. The duo who had just arrived was talking about a beautiful girl. Right then, Mumu tells Lin that they should leave immediately. She hated that type of person who acts like they own the world just because they have money. However, one of the guys blocks Mumu's path at that moment, and that guy's name was Juan. He was trying to hit on Mumu. Juan had a bad reputation as a rich kid with a rotten personality. Mumu unexpectedly tries to get out of the situation by saying she already has a boyfriend. This surprises both Tuan and even the MC. Huang does not accept what he just heard and tells Lin to back off. Our MC slaps the clueless guy on the hand, but that was all Huang wanted. It was the perfect excuse to go after our catastrophic healer. However, our MC responds to the warrior's charge skill with his combo reversal plunder. As a result, the attack is reflected back onto Huang. He ends up writhing in pain on the ground. The guy, not understanding anything, wonders what trick Lin used. But with a cynical look, our MC says that clearly he did nothing. And before he forgets, he informs Juan that his class is priest. No one there understood what had happened since priests have no offensive skills. Juan does not give up and tries to go after him again. However, for some reason, he is unable to advance. Lin is using that opportunity to experiment with his awakened reversal ability. In addition to reflecting damage, he inflicted some debuffs on Huang, threatening the MC. He demands to be freed from the negative effects. That fight caused a commotion in the area. Once again, the catastrophic priest became the center of attention. At that moment, Huang's companion interrupts the argument, apologizing for his friend. For the guy knew based on rumors that Lin had potentially awakened the great ability. Apparently, he wanted an opportunity to network with Lin, ignoring completely the suffering and humiliation of his companion, Huang. The guy then apologizes once more and warns that Juan could cause more trouble in the future. But he offers help and money to our MC and asks to be contacted if needed. The guy asks Lin to avoid Juan's group if possible, but our MC says he can take care of everyone if he wants. After all, our hero wants to test the strength of his abilities. The scene then cuts to a platform where the items were placed for auction. There was a commotion in the group because of the speed run and the ring that provides cooldown reduction. Mumu wonders if it is really possible to sell the speedrun strategy to high-level professionals, but Lin says that no one will ignore the fact that you can acquire extra skill points. We can see here that this strategy is indeed drawing the attention of several groups. Thus, many people were already buying the strategy since that tactic was already being validated. The groups were already able to achieve an SSA score using that strategy, causing it to go even more viral that made the strategy explode in sales. The positive feedback from everyone who bought it was something that could not be ignored. Besides working, it was really simple to avoid the monsters, and that was the formula for success. It soon became mandatory to purchase the strategy. That post caused a huge commotion in the professional community. Moon, who was disbelieving all that pile of profits. That post ended up attracting the attention of eminent people, where power groups were looking to find out who made the post. By tracing the IP, it was possible to know that the post came from the professional academy at Jinging School. Meanwhile, negotiations continued with our NC. He had closed a deal to sell the great sword for 80,000 and deliver it at the dungeon entrance. Mumu, as always, was very impressed with the profits so far, but Lin had already expected that result. Our MC is thinking of going to other dungeons since silver rank items can fall into disuse. And even with good equipment, it is indispensable to have solid combat experience. Mumu, impressed by such dedication, asks Lin why he wants to make so much money. Our MC is very happy to receive that question, and he replies that accumulating money is a way to protect the people he cares about. In his former life, he never felt the warmth of having a family. After experiencing those bonds, now for Lin, that is the most important thing. He recalls how he was mistreated after surviving that monster's attack, because his survival meant that his relatives received nothing from their parents' inheritance. One of his relatives intended to take his inheritance. To avoid being exploited and abused, Lin planned to run away. Then his uncles appeared, ensuring his inheritance and a home. The other relatives who had tried to exploit him were punished by justice. So simply put, making money was a way to reward his uncles, and becoming stronger was a way to protect them. Returning his thoughts to the present, someone catches our NC's attention. A lovely girl named Bai asks if he isn't the one selling the hunting sword. The MC finds it strange since the profile picture was of a muscular guy, but she assures him she's the right person. Saying her phone ran out of battery, yet she keeps insisting she's the muscular man. The MC wonders how such an adorable little girl could have a great sword combat style. But then he asks her to proceed with the payment and shows her the stats of the hunting sword. Lin then removes the sword from his subspace and tosses it to that adorable little girl. With impressive mastery, she catches the great sword and performs a stunning display handling that huge weapon. She thinks the price of the sword is too low, but Lin says it's just the market price. Bei then says she's never been good with math since she was a child. He gets worried and tells her to always double-check values so she doesn't get scammed. Bei thanks him and completes the transaction, making Lin's account reach 1,000,000. The two say goodbye, and the MC tells her she's welcome to reach out anytime she needs. At that moment, our healer is affected by something. It's a 24-hour buff called Gaze of the Gods of Luck, which allows the user to upgrade all treasure chests by 1 tier. The buff had been cast by the little girl, who then asks if she can join his team. Reflecting on it, our MC knows that luck attributes are extremely valuable in this world. The ability to boost the quality of your loot makes this skill absurdly powerful, allowing even professionals with weak talents to receive legendary or even mythical rewards. Lin then asks if she's told anyone about the effects of this buff. Very embarrassed, our adorable girl says no. We then learn the limitations of the ability. It can be used only 3 times per week on just one person. Lin warns our friend that if people find out about her ability, it could lead to a tragic end. With groups possibly trying to monopolize such an incredible power, and even the professional alliance with all its power wouldn't be enough to protect her. Because there are many powerful groups and factions with connections, resources, and money. Lin then proposes that she join his team. Bai is delighted with the offer. Our MC welcomes her to the team and properly introduces himself. He asks to go meet their other teammate. Bai comments that no one ever believed she could be a frontliner because of her adorable appearance. Sometime later, Lin introduces Bai to his companion as the supposed muscular man. Bai is thrilled to meet the famous Mumu in person. On the other hand, Mumu finds something odd. She notices Bai is way too pretty and becomes suspicious of Lin's intentions. Our MC breaks the ice and says they should eat something before going to the dungeon. Mumu then wants to know which dungeon it'll be. Lin replies that it'll be the nightmare-level goblin dungeon. His plan is to go ahead and come up with a strategy to ensure they earn extra attributes. The rewards in nightmare mode of this dungeon are very generous, guaranteeing gold grade chests or higher. However, the monster stats have an explosive increase. Mumu scolds him, saying it's a suicide mission, but Lin asks her to trust him. Still, Mumu says even professionals above level 10 have taken casualties there. As the two continue to argue, Bei remembers she has something to do and says goodbye. The argument ends with the MC saying he'll only challenge it on hard mode. Mumu, very nervous, threatens to tell his parents if he doesn't keep his promise. This makes our MC question whether she's really as easy to persuade as she seems. Meanwhile, somewhere else, our MC continues to be a topic of discussion where people are wondering if a beginner is really soloing dungeons on his own. Everyone discusses who might be the strongest beginner of the season. Juan and Mumu are both mentioned. Already at home, Lin wonders what Mumu is looking at so much on her phone, so he decides to just take it from her hand and sneak a quick peek. Finally, dinner is ready. Lin is having dinner with his uncles who asked how school is going. He replies that everything's going wonderfully so far. His uncle remembers that he's always been very competitive but asks Lin to be careful. Finding the warning strange, he asks if someone complained about him. And without hesitation, his uncle rats out Mumu right away. Meanwhile, his aunt says he should be more like Mumu. Our priest says he understands and promises to act just like Mumu from now on. But Sue feels like there was a sarcastic tone in what the MC just said. Continuing on, Lin tries to reassure his uncles by saying he doesn't plan to push past his limits. His uncle says he understands and asks Lin to remember that this will always be his home. He offers our MC some money, but Lin says he already has enough. His aunt gets quite upset that our hero won't accept the help, so to please them, he decides to accept it anyway. Reflecting on his uncle's kindness, Lin wishes his parents could see how well he's doing now. Then our MC promises to enjoy the good life that's been given to him. Our hero still has a strong goal of becoming very powerful. Ignoring his promise to Mumu, he decides to enter the dungeon in nightmare mode. The scene cuts to Huang's home, where a heated argument is taking place. Huang accuses his companion of betrayal over that situation with our NC. He says that if he had his gear, things would have gone differently. But his friend tells him to just rest. Still, Huang is furious and throws a glass, calling Zhao a piece of shit brother. Zhao then asks if Huang thinks he can do whatever he wants just because he's the young master of the Huang group. He reminds him he could have taken his uncle's offer and that Huang deserved a serious beating. So bad that even his mother wouldn't recognize him, but then he remembers Huang doesn't have a mother. In the end, he just walks out of the room, leaving Huang burning with rage. The guy starts to reflect that Huang has no idea who he messed with this time. A bit more composed, Huang decides to call in some contacts to deal with a certain problem. He says he'll provide equipment and handle things if anything happens. The scene then shifts to the goblin dungeon. Lin was on the first floor of the Mystic Forest. The current challenge is to clear the first floor. This was a dungeon known for its extreme difficulty in clearing monster hordes, with an impressive reward offering a platinum chest. Along with a buff and 15 extra attribute points, Lin came across gigantic level 5 goblins. He was about to face these monstrosities. However, he was extremely confident as always. Within just 5 seconds, the monsters began gathering at the entrance. Lin's goal was to test his skill at grouping monsters and wiping them out. To score SSS, he needed to eliminate all monsters without using special items and defeat the secret boss. However, the time to clear each floor couldn't exceed 10 minutes, so our MC had to take them out quickly. Because of that, grouping them together was a necessary strategy. Lin had taken 2 minutes and 5 seconds so far, exceeding his own expectations of 4 minutes. Everything going according to plan. Our MC decides to stop. It was time to face the goblins, so our catastrophic healer prepares to cast a skill. His healing skill had evolved to level 2. Right after Lin managed to speed run the first floor, and on the second floor, our MC also achieved incredible results, and so he kept performing impressively. The speed run was perfect, always finishing with time to spare, allowing him to reach the 5th floor's entrance without much trouble. On the other side, Lin stood face to face with the Goblin King. That was a terrifying level 8 boss, but Lin found it odd that there were no monsters besides the boss at the entrance. Also, right after stepping through the portal, the boss was already ready to fight. Our MC had to brace himself for an area attack right off the bat. With enough agility, it was possible to dodge or roll to reduce the damage. But since we're talking about our NC, things were a bit different. Using his awakened ability, he reversed the area damage into area healing, leaving the boss completely confused by what had just happened. Wasting no time, Lin prepares an attack against the boss, dealing over 200 points of damage. This enrages the boss. It starts charging up a massive attack with green lightning and hurls it straight at our NC. The boss was using Dragon Spear and Flying Challenger, but he got confused because those attacks had no effect on Lin. So the Goblin King decides to try something else. At that moment, the boss begins summoning minions. To Lin, this was expected a nightmare-level dungeon. Because of that, our MC's plans had to change a bit. He looked noticeably concerned. The boss concludes that skills don't work on the MC and orders the minions to attack. From the boss's logic, countless physical attacks should do the trick. So Lin had to deal with a horde of enemies attacking him in close combat. Without hesitation, the monster horde rushed at our MC. Lin then decides to retreat backward while returning a few attacks to the goblins. He had been dodging quite well up until then. However, things started to get a bit more difficult. Goblins began to unleash volleys of arrows, but it seemed like Lin had everything under control since he could still heal from those attacks with ease, completely nullifying the effectiveness of the goblin archers. The boss was starting to get very impatient, worried about the sinister expression on our NC's face. Lin then positions his stylish staff and unleashes his healing ability plundering technique, continuing his sequence of attacks. Using and abusing his awakened ability reversal, the boss complains that our NC is fighting in a cowardly way, coming from a boss who sends minions to fight for him. To Lin, this was supposed to be a direct confrontation. Our MC then performs plundering technique once again. The area of effect managed to reach all the goblins present there. Our MC looked like a true god of death, and the effect of his ability could be seen from afar. Reddish lightning dancing across the skies, covering the entire structure, consequently hitting all the enemies inside. Lin gained 1,000 experience points by eliminating all those monsters, while the boss was left with less than 1% of his HP. Because of his low health, the boss was extremely weakened. So without wasting time, Lin decides to finish him off using once more his reverse healing ability on the boss, granting Lin 500 experience points and securing level 7. The dungeon had been completed. All requirements for an SS score had been successfully met, and still under the effect of Baez buff. The treasure chest was upgraded from gold rank to platinum. So without wasting time, Lin decides to open it. And here we see all that delicious loot our MC obtained. Skill Book Holy Light, which deals divine damage to enemies. Gold rank Flame Pot, which deals 300 damage when thrown at the enemy. Platinum rank item Blindstone, granting a 20 increase to all of the user's attributes. Skill Book Glory of the Stars Platinum rank, offering area healing and damage reduction. Lastly, the gold rank Sandstorm Bow, a beautiful bow that deals elemental damage. The two skill books are what most catch our MC's attention. So he begins to think about practical uses for Glory of the Stars. Without wasting time, Lin decides to learn this ability and also allocates all his 15 earned points into intelligence. At last, everything had come to an end. That run had been an absolute success. We can see Lin's results in his status window. At that moment, our MC had just been caught off guard. He had played it cool, but our dear Mew Mew is no fool. She was disappointed with Lin, but it was something she had expected. So she asks if he really cleared the dungeon on nightmare difficulty. Lin replies yes, and Mumu says she wants to try the dungeon too. Our MC listens, but Mumu is still a little upset. The two stop for a moment in front of the dungeon. At that moment, a duo that had been following them had just arrived. They had their sights set on Lin. It was Juan, his contact. He orders his lackey to teach Lin a lesson, but his subordinate recognizes Lin as an extremely dangerous person. Huang then loses patience, saying he can trust this punk. But that hiccup didn't matter much to him as he had prepared something else. The scene then cuts to another location where Lin was listing his items for sale, as well as his strategy for clearing the Goblin Dungeon. Already well-known online as Big Shot. People were really hyped. Once again, he brought something new. People had already started investigating his true identity. However, there were still doubts about whether the infamous Big Shot was really just a beginner student. Meanwhile, Lin kept receiving offers to buy his items as well as successfully making sales, and his bank account had already reached the incredible value of $1,500,000. However, the MC wasn't very satisfied with the result. His buff was still active, giving him time to even rest. So Lin decides to do something, thinking of getting some exercise in and then relaxing a bit. The scene cuts to a coastline under beautiful moonlight where our MC was working out. Right behind him, a luxury car could be seen approaching. That quickly caught Lin's attention. A duo of young men pulled up in a dramatic entrance. It was Juan looking for trouble, asking Lin to get in the car. Our MC reminds him that his brother warned him to stay away, but Juan says his brother is a traitor and brings up Lin's family. Hearing this, our MC decides to accept Huang's challenge, but he tells him not to cry if he can't handle the situation. The idea of a one-on-one makes Huang's companion nervous. However, Huang tells his friend he has the best equipment and asks him not to interfere. They also start whispering about a certain plan. Our MC was already getting impatient and said they could all come at once if they wanted to. Huang responds that he'll regret those provocations, saying he'll wipe the floor with his face. With a sinister expression, RNC thinks about giving Juan a wicked end. Then they finally leave the place, inside a luxury car speeding down the road. And at last, they arrive at their destination. It was a place filled with well-equipped professionals. Lin asks if everyone will come at once or one by one. Juan replies it will be one-on-one. Using the Wind Shadow Sword ability, Wang says his group will finish him off one at a time. Lin mocks him, saying he hasn't seen anything special yet. Then that crowd of hunters rushes at Lin. Our MC then summons his stylish staff from his subspace. His enemies were just about to strike him, but Lin manages to dodge with impressive agility. Our MC decides to create a bit of distance, but a full-kit professional uses the assault-slash ability, and a slashing attack is fired in Lin's direction. As the situation starts to tighten, our MC thinks it's time to use his awakened reversal ability. The attack hits its target dead on, raising a large cloud of smoke, but that was far from the end, and his opponent is shocked by something. He had just been hit somehow. Left not understanding what had just happened, analyzing the situation, he knew no attack had been made. Still trying to make sense of it, he tells his companions not to worry. That crowd was still overly confident and continued charging at Lin. However, no one there was more confident than Lin, who then uses a skill called Reversal All the Stars Ahead. With sinister effects of crimson chains, Lin keeps up the assault, now performing the ability Fallen Heaven and Earth Hell, causing his enemies to be affected instantly with those eerie chains binding them or piercing through their bodies. With little effort, all his enemies were already at his feet. The full-set guy is in disbelief, realizing they were defeated in the blink of an eye. Someone comments on the scene saying you can't trust people like Dario when it comes to money. Wang then decides to step into the fight using an absurdly expensive piece of gear. His full-set subordinate is stunned by Kwang's purchasing power. And obviously because of his gear, he's feeling very confident. He asks our MC if he's feeling scared. Wang then steps forward, telling Lin it's not too late to beg for mercy. Our MC says his armor can't defend against the insecurity in Huang's heart and mocks him, saying he can't win. Wang then charges using the Shadow Wind Sword, but Lin manages to dodge successfully. This makes Huang a bit nervous. Watching the fight, the full-set guy wonders how a priest can have such attack power. On top of that, he felt the attack didn't come from a human. It was as if he was facing demonic waves. Meanwhile, a stunned Huang asks if Lin put all his points into agility, but he's still overly confident, thinking he can end it with a single strike. Still, Lin keeps provoking him while dodging all his attacks. Our MC finally decides to go on the offensive using damage reversal. He then unleashes the plundering technique. The attack deals 1,000 points of damage to his armor, causing all his attributes to vanish. Yet Juan hadn't given up just yet. He then starts charging at Lin blindly with multiple attacks, but none of the strikes managed to land on our MC. Lin just kept dodging effortlessly. The full-set guy and his companions were watching the entire fight. Huang was already severely weakened, and then something else happens to him. Huang starts taking damage from a mysterious source. While preparing a healing skill, Lin says defense is useless because he can ignore armor. Huang is then healed for 1,840 points. At that moment, Lin makes a proposal. Huang should surrender and hand over his diamond grade gear. Huang fiercely responds that only in his dreams, and clearly, Lin didn't like hearing that one bit. Feeling humiliated, Huang decides to go all in with his final attack using his ability, Pegasus Meteor Explosion. The attack truly explodes upon impact with the target. Huang then begins to celebrate his victory, but before he can finish his sentence, his body begins to twist uncontrollably. Lin steps out from the middle of the explosion seemingly unharmed. Once again, he prepares his healing ability, restoring Huang's body once more. Now recovered, Huang threatens him, saying his father won't let this slide if he gets hurt. Lin responds that what he despises most in this world are threats. With that, without a hint of hesitation, our MC launches an attack at Huang. Saying that this is just the beginning, he releases a flash of red light. It was a devastating attack. Wang's subordinate is shocked by the scene. Without any mercy, Lin had begun a heal and smash session. He was using this opportunity to test every type of strike. It was a pitiful sight. Lin wanted to carve into the hearts of his enemies the consequences of challenging him. He then uses the catastrophe descents. The brutality of the attacks made everyone there question whether Huang was even still alive. We then get a close-up of a camera recording the entire scene. The camera was live streaming in real time. All those scenes were witnessed by the public, who were stunned to see that Huang dared to challenge such a powerful mage. The audience could observe everything, including what was being said. Viewers were amazed to see a priest using offensive abilities, and people began to speculate who that priest really was, remembering the scene in front of the dungeon between the goddess Mumu, Juan, and Lin. Putting the pieces together, the public began to suspect he was the one solo clearing dungeons. Ba was extremely worried watching all the commotion on the internet. After all, Lin's identity was on the verge of being revealed. She was afraid of being replaced by someone more interesting to him. A fan club had already been created. Back to the main topic, the public was outraged by Huang's rotten behavior demanding action. Even if his father was someone very influential, something had to be done. That entire situation caused a devastating drop in the assets of the Juan Corporation. The scene then cuts to Mumu asking her parents to take action against Juan. Her father says it can't be done, while her mother says that bad people will eventually get what they deserve on their own. Mu interrupts them, frustrated because she was more afraid that Lin might end up becoming bad like Juan. The scene cuts again to a location where an organization is discussing our NC, commenting that the boy has yet to participate in the professional qualification test. The white-haired executive speculates that Lin might possess an awakened ability above legendary level. He recalls that once every 100 years, a genius is accepted into the professional alliance as an exception. The executive then brings up this idea with his colleague. The two purple-haired women agree with the idea immediately. Meanwhile, the bald man asks if Huang isn't there yet, and if he's already given up on his son. Another man says that this isn't a problem for Minister Huang, because it's also an opportunity to resolve everything. Minister Huang says he's handling some things, but that compensation for Lin has already been arranged. Apologizing for his son, he says he's already sent someone to resolve the matter. From above, where our MC is, a helicopter grabs his attention, asking him to show mercy. The man says that the Juan Corporation's office wishes to speak with him, while the young Huang, seeing that, thinks Lin is doomed. Lin responds that if they're trying to pressure him, they'd better send the president himself. But the man says it's a misunderstanding, and the Juan Corporation wants to compensate him for the casualties. Young Huang is stunned by that attitude and finds it absurd that his father would apologize to Lin. Moments later, President Huang was there in person to apologize for failing as a father. Lin finds him quite polite, but for President, verbal apologies are not enough. Our MC agrees to be compensated but wants to make a few requests. Lin asks for 3 diamond sets, 1 for a priest, 1 for a mage, and 1 for a warrior. In addition, he asks for 5,000 alliance coins. Zhao is immediately shocked by such a huge demand. It would be extremely difficult to find 3 different diamond rank sets. Leader Huang doesn't reject the request, but says it might take a few days. Meanwhile, Zhao was a bit irritated for having to clean up young Huang's mess, so he starts adjusting his glasses for some reason. His glasses are able to detect the device from the camera that recorded the entire situation. Zhao walks over saying that Huang went to apologize and make amends with Lin for the incident. When Huang mentioned that the alliance would help, It made Lin realize he had caught the Alliance's attention. Leader Kwang even offers access to some nearby special dungeons. However, not all dungeons are under his control, as many factions share authority over them. Lin tells him not to worry, as he only needs a month anyway. Zhao is shocked since there were 50 dungeons in total. That would be an unbelievable feat for a newly registered professional. President Huang then invites Lin and his team to dinner the following night. Our MC responds by asking if he can stream a live during dinner. President Huang, very impressed, agrees. Lin tells Zhao he'll take his and the president's good attitude into consideration, but warns him of potential problems. Zhao comments on the issues within his family, but Lin shows no interest. The next day, in a 5-star restaurant. It was the first restaurant in Jingyang City to earn the 5-star title. This restaurant focused primarily on customer experience. Each room had its own dedicated service. And even if you ordered something simple like eggs, the service would be just as exceptional. Mumu was still very worried because of the Huang family's nature. But Lin tells her not to worry, as he believes the goal of all this is to build connections. They finally arrived at the private room number 888, where President Huang was already waiting for them. His team is then introduced to the president. And before anything else, he wants to apologize for his son's rotten behavior. That takes our beauties by surprise, as they weren't expecting such manners. They're charmed by Huang's father's good behavior. Lin replies that he'll forget the whole situation, even if Huang never acknowledges his mistakes. Understand each other and shake hands. At that moment, one of the coordinators arrives, saying he has secured the item. President Huang then asks his guard to show them. We then see the dining grade set for a priest. Its attributes greatly boost healing and survival skills, making reverse damage double in effect. With that, Lin says he's very satisfied. Meanwhile, the adorable warrior Bai is completely enchanted as soon as she lays eyes on the set. Mumu, on the other hand, thinks it must have cost a fortune. Despite her concerns, she ends up thanking the president for the equipment. The entire meeting was being broadcasted just as promised. The two then continued the dinner in a friendly manner. As always, Bai was only thinking about eating at that moment. At the end of the dinner, the two say goodbye one last time. The scene then cuts to the Land of Bones. In nightmare difficulty, the resources there are certainly promising. Back outside the restaurant, Lin had already become very famous, and that was the result of all his growing fame. The scene then cuts to Juan, who was all beaten up and trying to recover. A sinister presence was there, and Juan asks the entity to identify itself. It introduces itself as Master Migo of the Abyss, a high-ranking demon. Juan, however, doesn't think much of him. Migo asks him if he's happy with the outcome of the humiliation he suffered, while Juan just listens to what he has to say. Migao asks once more if he's content with the situation. With people laughing at him and his family abandoning him, the demon then offers a deal, saying he can grant Juan unmatched power, and all he has to do is crush those who humiliated him. Huang immediately refuses, saying he's a genius among geniuses and doesn't need charity from trash. The demon is extremely annoyed, but thinks he must remain patient for now. Then Miguel leaves but tells Huang that if he ever needs him, just call his name, and he will grant Huang great power. The scene then cuts to the entrance of the secret dungeon Land of Bones at nightmare difficulty. Lin asks Bai how many times she can still use her awakened skill this week. They were on the verge of entering the Land of Bones. Bai replies that she can use it only once more, as she had already used it twice. And Lin tells her not to waste it and always save it for the best moments. He already has very advanced, so the loot from this dungeon wouldn't take them much further. The Huang family had already promised to provide the group with better dungeon resources this week, and now all they needed were better weapons. Lin says they have 3 goals: get better weapons, increase attributes, and achieve an SS score. Mumu agrees, saying she won't get involved unless he does something wrong. The two are finally inside the dungeon. To achieve a triple S rating, the conditions were eliminate the final boss and all undead skeletons. Do not use the specific weapon Holy Sword and before finishing the dungeon. The Holy Sword's durability must be above 60%. Bai says this dungeon is known to be a pain because the normal and hard difficulties are basically the same. Seeing our sweet Bai's concern, Mumu tries to calm her down, saying that after this run she'll buy her favorite food. Using the money they'll earn from this run, Lin gets ready and asks them to watch closely. He then bites his own finger and pours his blood on a spot. This triggers a massive reaction, using blood to lure the skeletons, making them completely ignore the holy sword. Lin maximizes the bleeding, causing damage to himself. Leaving the skeleton horde completely obsessed with him, his party prepares and Mu tosses Lin a pill with pain-relieving effects. Our MC then takes the pill. Meanwhile, the skeletons charge straight at him. With his vitality at 25%, the skeletons were going wild. Seeing it all, Bei becomes extremely worried about Lin. But Mumu says there's no need to worry. After all, that's Lin. Our MC plans to increase the skeleton's obsession even more by reducing his HP to just 10%. He was leading the horde to the edge of the land of bones, and finally he arrived there with the skeleton horde in tow. He then prepares restoring his vitality, confusing the skeletons. Our MC no longer looked so appetizing, but it was too late for the horde. And Lin uses his divine damage reversal ability. The skeleton horde is hit by a skill called Fallen Hell, and the HP bars of all those skeletons drop to 0. The catastrophic priest was doing great so far, but then a sinister sound came from within the abyss, making the girls quite anxious. Lin becomes a bit more serious about what's coming next. It was the dungeon boss, the undead knight. He charges at the group, yelling that he'll drink their blood using their own skulls. Here we can see the stats of the level 9 undead knight boss. The boss uses the ability grudge firing. Lin wastes no time and activates reversal healing art. Slamming his staff to the ground, he uses plundering technique, launching lightning beams at the boss, reducing the undead knight's HP by half. He had lost 500 health points. Our reverse healer found this boss quite fragile because of that. So he decides to use another skill combo. Reversal Divine Healing Method Catastrophe Descendants Damage. With the brutality of that attack, the boss had taken severe damage. This triggered his passive Undead Fury, boosting his stats. The boss then lets out a roar calling for his brothers to return, a summoning that caused all the skeletons to come back, regenerating 100 HP per second. Because of this, our MC was now surrounded by the undead. The boss asks the priest if he has any last words before being eliminated. However, our MC remained extremely confident. Mumu says the boss is an idiot because Lin doesn't need the sacred sword to deal with this. Using reversal, our priest would take just seconds to wipe them all out. And so it was. The undead horde was annihilated, leaving the boss unable to believe his own eyes. This time, Lin asks the undead knight what his last words are. Then he strikes the boss with plundering technique, doubling the 750 damage points. It was an incredible sight. The undead knight boss was defeated, granting the group 6,000 XP and the SS reward. Our NC then had a flashy level up. And here we can see his new stats in the status window. Moo congratulates him while adorable Bei jumps for joy. However, something unexpected happens at that moment. A key to a catastrophe-level sub-dungeon appeared for the group. Bei wondered if that was even real. A prompt then asks our hero if he wants to open the reward chest. Numu is extremely surprised to learn there's a sub-dungeon key in this dungeon. Lin replies that yes, that's right, and sub-dungeon rewards are on another level. Beginner dungeons go up to Nightmare, but beyond that, there's Calamity, Disaster, Catastrophe, and Epic. Bai gets extremely excited at the possibility of getting better rewards. Mumu replies that yes, exactly. Those rewards are many times better. Lin is impressed that no SSS rank professional had managed to get that key before. Mu tells him to hurry up because she wants to see what Lin would get from the treasure chest without Bai's buff. So this is it. This is the best moment of all. Finally, the MC opens the treasure chest. He gains 10 attribute points, the Hound's Fang, Platinum rank, and the Meteor Staff. None of these items are useful for a priest, but there was something interesting for Mumu. She's feeling awful but happy with her new staff. Still, it wasn't a waste of time. Our MC got the 10 attribute points. Lin says the Meteor Staff could activate his 5-element master ability. They start planning as their gear is already far beyond what's needed for the professional exam. As they leave, Lin says the group's goal should be to reach level 10 by doing dungeons. Our MC asks the girls if they can finish this dungeon without him. Sweet and fearless Bai says it's no problem for her. But in the middle of the conversation, something happens. Lin goes on full alert and tells the girls to be careful, but then he sees something disturbing. A clearly hostile group is in front of him, and the brood of the group is holding Bei hostage, demanding the storm's root key. It was an advanced level group once again demanding Lin give up the storm's key. Lin was only level 8 and Mumu was level 6. While their enemies were all over level 10 seeing all this, Bai, completely outraged, decides to act. She breaks free from the brute who was holding her, but another shitty figure was already preparing an attack. The enemy group's mage then fires a skill at our admirable Bai. Unfortunately, it hits her squarely. The mage praises the girl's attempt. Seeing that, Lin tells them to prepare to die if they don't release Bai. But that group of thugs completely ignores him, so our MC decides to act, catching the enemy mage by surprise. The explosion from the attack creates an opening for Bai to escape. The mages team at Skolton for failing to deal with the attack. Another member already restrained wonders how someone below level 10 could have that kind of firepower. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Moom had already taken someone down using bionic tears. Lin then tells them that you have to be crazier than Batman to think about robbing them. The enemy mage says Lin will regret his arrogance. He then casts the buff on his companion and tells him not to leave anyone alive. The brute charges at the group using fighting spirit. He wants to take on Lin first since he doesn't see the girls as a big threat. Our MC tells the girls to stay back a bit because he can sense that those humans have made demonic deals, so it's dangerous. Lin then uses his reverse ability, Descending Catastrophe. The enemy mage sees it and starts mocking him. Thinking his companion handled it, he tells him to strip Lin of his expensive gear. The silhouette of the brute can be seen, but he's already wrecked, and his team is horrified seeing him like that. The mage tells their healer to quickly heal the brute, but it's not possible. He's already dead. The mage assumes he made a demonic pact, but suddenly remembers this might be the infamous Lin. Now realizing who that person is, the mage panics and tries to run. But Lin says he won't let someone who made a demonic deal walk away unpunished. So our NC uses Starlight Radiance with reversal, creating the Fallen Hell, obliterating his enemies in the process. A combo attack using reversal can kill a nightmare-level boss. Professionals a few levels above would obviously have their HP bars wiped out. The girls become extremely worried, wondering if they should get rid of the bodies now, but Lin says they probably don't have any connections and might just be criminals. Our MC then starts checking the belongings of those unlucky guys. He regrets not being able to use gear that only those with demonic deals can equip, but he ends up finding something that catches his interest. It was a pass to a calamity-level dungeon. His mood shifts instantly from bad to great. The death of the giant dungeon had been used for the professional test in the past. And for many years, no team had ever fully cleared that dungeon, because the second boss, the Dark Cursed Knight, became a nightmare for anyone who dared to challenge it. The biggest goal of challengers in that dungeon was to obtain the catastrophe-level key to the Forgotten Nest, but that's a story for another time. Moo is very excited to learn that it really is the key to the giant's death dungeon. With great enthusiasm, she asks if they can go there, and Lin replies that as soon as Bai's buff cooldown ends, they definitely should. Our group doesn't just need to clear the dungeon and reach level 10 for now. It's also essential that they obtain the pass to the sub-dungeon Forgotten Nest. Meanwhile, the girls still wonder if they should bury or burn the bodies. Mumu regrets not having a summoner in the group since they could have used them as food for a summon. Lin is speechless hearing those crazy ideas. Then he says they can just throw the bodies into the dungeon and wait for it to disappear. Finally, the group comes to a decision about what to do with the corpses. And after handling that, Lin tells them to rest and wait for Bai's buff cooldown. The girls are immediately happy with that idea. Mumu says she doesn't even remember the last time they could relax. And Lin says it'll be smooth sailing from here on out. And as always, Bai was 100% focused on her food. Our MC suggests they come back there whenever they have free time, but Mumu was thinking of saving up for the group skier. Hearing that, Bai offers to pay the bill this time. Lin stops the two and reminds them they have more than enough money. At that moment, a waiter appears saying someone else paid their bill. It was a white-haired young man greeting them from across the room. He introduces himself as Shangguan, a professional alliance officer and director of the Lingyan sect. The MC then greets him and introduces his group to Shang. Right away, Shang says he's there to invite Lin to join the Ling Yin sect, thus allowing her hero to become a member of the professional alliance. Lin is surprised but worried people might doubt his abilities since he hasn't taken the exam yet. Because of that, Lin explains he can't accept and decides he doesn't want to be part of a sect. Shang, surprised by the rejection, says that powerful individuals must follow their own convictions. He adds that it's no problem, and that he hopes to see Lin join the alliance soon. The officer says he's available and also expresses interest in dueling Lin. Exuding confidence as always, Lin says it's no problem for him. A new round of challenges had just begun. Bijou was getting ready at that moment to use the buff gaze of the goddess of luck, which lasts 24 hours. Lin then asks her to use the pass and the key to open the portal to the giant's death. A message appears saying the portal to that dungeon has been reviewed and opened. The portal to the giant's death then opens with calamity difficulty level. Moo says it's a dungeon unlike any other with fragments of a secret realm. Finally, our group comes across their first enemy. Moo asks to handle these small enemies herself. Using her clever ability Bionic Tears, Moo takes care of the first enemy. Not wanting to be left behind, Bei also gets ready, landing a sequence of hits on the fallen spectral soldier. Watching from behind, Lin decides to use the healing art Clarity. Our MC is impressed with the girls' performance. Their performance had far surpassed that of other students. Our beautiful ladies keep on fighting. Mummy uses Poison Bubble while Bai prepares Flame Slash. The monster is annihilated with that combo, and after defeating the enemies, the group hears a sinister noise. They immediately go on high alert. Lin announces that the first boss has finally arrived. It was the level 3 White Spirit Knight. Without wasting time, our NC uses Starlight Radiance Reversal, and Moo wonders if that attack actually worked. Lin quickly replies that it hasn't worked yet. He then asks the girls to be careful and apply bleeding debuffs. The boss had rushed at their group. The girls respond with Bionic Tears, Poison Bubble, and Flame Slash. With that, they successfully inflicted bleeding and poison debuffs on the boss. But the boss managed to use a skill that restored his HP and gave him defense buffs. Moo wonders if the boss becomes invincible after reaching 40% HP, and Bai is impressed at how challenging the first boss can be. Lin explains that this ability was one the boss had before becoming undead. He says he'll take care of it and asks the girls not to draw the boss's attention. Our catastrophic healer analyzes the advantages and disadvantages of the terrain, and thanks the heavens the boss hadn't reached professional stats while still alive. However, the knight surprises Lin by casting a skill called Radiant Javelin. Our MC is caught in the explosion, but nothing happens thanks to his awakened skill, Reversal. Boss looks completely confused like a deer in headlights, and before he could even think, our MC had already prepared a counterattack. The boss quickly concludes that long-range attacks don't work, so he charges into melee using the Spiritual Power Gathering. Lin responds by using the Blink skill item. Right after, he performs a confinement art using the Reversal Clarity art. This combo granted him the ability to teleport up to 10 meters. Lin was already pleased with the result because the boss had fallen right into his trap, but both of them kept trading blows. While the MC had healed, the effects of the boss's abilities had already worn off, so he decides to retreat for now. However, Moo quickly reacts and prevents the boss from escaping. Lin seizes the opportunity to perform his Catastrophe Descends with a combo Starlight Radiance Fallen Hell, defeating the boss and earning the group 8,600 XP points. Having completed the first challenge, the group now had to find the next boss. However, Lin couldn't see the signals that were supposed to appear. That's when he realizes that the teleport method is different in a calamity-level dungeon. Lin takes the chance to remind the girls to roll when landing to avoid injury. Apparently, our MC has his own unique way of landing, and the group arrives at the new location without further problems. However, something suddenly hits our MC hard, and the girls are left in shock. Bai starts shouting for them to focus on the boss. Lin had been impaled by the Black Curse boss. Our MC already knew that boss had that kind of behavior. If it weren't for his awakened skill reversal, he wouldn't have been able to handle that surprise attack. Wasting no time, the boss launches a new attack. Our MC tells the girls not to dodge, but to block it directly instead. Bai, radiating determination, gets ready. Just as Lin instructed, she attempts to block the attack. She succeeds, but the girls still take some damage. The boss's Moonlight Sword was truly powerful, even with part of its effect neutralized. Lin then prepares to strike back. He uses his Fallen Hell combo on the boss. The attack looked like a true catastrophe. Not getting the boss any time to react, RNC follows up with the blundering technique. However, even with that devastating combo, only a third of the boss's HP was affected. Saying that, Moon decides to help by chaining her skills. The boss is then hit with ice and poison, but the damage dealt to the boss was mediocre. Not wasting time, Lin acts again. He prepares another barrage of attacks, managing to land a hit on the boss, but our NC is also countered in sent flying. Fortunately, the entire attack sequence was reversed in damage, so our NC was only healing from those hits. Then the boss spots a weakness in Lin. He attacks, causing a critical hit. Our girls, seeing this, become extremely worried. However, that attack was also reversed into healing. But Lin was still impressed by the boss's power. Just as he was about to reach the girls, Lin unleashes another barrage of attacks, drawing the boss's attention back to him. Our MC signals the girls to stick to the plan while he keeps the boss's aggro on himself. With mobility skills and true damage attacks, it became possible to handle that extremely powerful boss. Now the boss had changed his focus. Our ladies had drawn aggro from the boss, but the catastrophic healer couldn't let that happen. The boss's aggro had to stay on him at all times. That way, all of the boss's attacks would be useless. Lin then prepares to finish the boss with a flashy attack. That imposing adversary had fallen to his knees. It was as if he had surrendered. Our MC looked surprised seeing that. The dungeon challenge had been successfully completed. Bai is amazed to see that they received a powerful summon as a reward. Lin affectionately explains that the prize was absurd because it had been stacking, but the system messages still hadn't stopped. It said that our group had obtained the pass to the catastrophe-level Forgotten Nest dungeon. Our reverse healer reminds MU that this was their main goal here. Our MC wonders what kind of effects this achievement will have on others. Because by eliminating that troublesome boss, the test would become much easier. Only the giant boss at the end remained. Our group starts thinking about how terrifying that boss must look. Bei remembers the guide telling them to stay on its left side and deal with its claws. Even though the boss looks terrifying, it's extremely slow. This time, our reverse priest thinks about using the reward from the last fight on this boss. So he summons the Dark Cursed Knight. Our NC calls him by his nickname, Professor, and orders him to attack. According to Lin, this summon still has the same power it had when it was a boss. The professor uses his full moon dash, but the boss counters with the giant barrage. Our knightly professor makes his next move, Weakness Insight, landing a series of slashing strikes on the boss. Lin tells the girls to get ready using Bai Z's ultimate and buff. Then they go all in against the boss with everything they've got, pushing the giant to the brink of collapse. The catastrophic priest then decides to finish it off. With his skill fallen hell, the experience of defeating the boss made the whole party level up. Lin had finally reached the major power spike of hitting level 10. With an XB burst from the achievements, Lin was at level 11, Nuum at 9, and Bai at 8. The SSS score guaranteed our group some great rewards. Thanks to Baz buff, our party was blessed with a platinum treasure chest. Wasting no time, the group opens the chest. Each party member received 15 extra attribute points, and also the Heart of Giant Marrow, Ash Lightning Paper, White Spirit Knight Plate, and Spear, and Rising Tide. All of that pretty solid in our MC's opinion. Without delay, he decides to test his newly acquired ability. He realizes that the buffs seem to cause slow and stun effects. In other words, it's an attack that inflicts debuffs along with damage. The only problem is that it's not clear what exact debuff will trigger. Lin thinks it'll be interesting to start learning more crowd control skills from now on. Remembering the AWAKEN skill specs, reversal. If it reaches a high level, it can even alter the essence of abilities. Lin says that after distributing the rewards, he'll inform the Alliance about the boss professor's disappearance. Our MC thinks that this info is bound to stir things up. The next day in the office of the first instructor, he was shocked that Lin had taken down the troublesome second boss. The Professional Alliance had verified all of the NC group's accomplishments, and he had also managed to obtain the pass to the Forgotten Nest. They recalled the casualties suffered by those who attempted this feat. And due to the level cap, those who failed don't get a second chance. A talent like this would definitely be highly valued within the Professional Alliance. The first instructor says that all students at the academy should be grateful, so he considers organizing a celebration for the achievement. However, Juan reminds him that the test difficulty must remain to ensure professional quality, but the first instructor says he's simply expressing his feelings. The group continues discussing the matter. At that moment, they're interrupted by Mumu bringing up something important. Someone had spread fake news accusing Lin of having a demonic contract. Recognizing her comrade's strength, Mumu demands the school and the Alliance take action. The first instructor says he understands the situation, and the professional Alliance officer promises to look into it. On some forums, there was a full-blown reputation assassination going on, and the public was demanding Lin to prove his strength immediately. The first instructor assures Sue he'll find out who's responsible. Someone going by the name Professor, the white-haired one, says this person clearly doesn't understand how the Alliance works. Right then, the MC shows up demanding a demonic aura test. Soon after, they already identified the source of the fake news, but there was still public uproar since Lin had requested the demonic aura test, and the reporters were desperate to get a word with him. But when he faced the crowd, everyone went silent, and the catastrophic priest found it pathetic that reporters would get so nervous. The public got upset because the reporters didn't ask any questions. At the test site, the guards asked Lin to enter. So our MC prepared himself for the demonic aura test. The man told him he didn't need to do this just because of rumors, because real professionals believed in his strength. However, the MC replied that he found the whole situation rather uninteresting. He said he didn't want those rumors to affect the people around him. The other guard joked that if the test came back positive, he'd have to arrest him. Of course, he was just kidding. Still, as the test neared its end, the guards were clearly nervous. The test finally concluded, showing that Lin had 0 demonic aura contamination. With the test result announced, everyone got hyped. The result was being broadcast to the public. With that, the people who had doubted him came to the conclusion that Lin was truly built different. After proving himself, Lin says that if anyone has a problem, they can take it up with him directly. The one who didn't like the outcome of the demonic test at all was the young Juan. Not satisfied with the result, he decides to take action. The scene cuts to a sidewalk where our priest is being followed. Someone finds it odd to see someone as prominent as Lin just doing some shopping. But in the blink of an eye, he loses sight of the priest, who then surprises him from behind. The well-dressed man tells our hero not to play dumb, because he knows Lin also ran into those guys with a demonic contract. The man warns him that acquaintances of those people might come after him, just like they went after Huang. Lin finds it strange that he didn't report it to the police, but Huang says he had his reasons, saying that someone as grand as him would never succumb to demonic forces. The MC is impressed by such proper behavior coming from trash like Huang. Our MC walks away, but Huang still believes he must have accepted some demonic offer. However, Lin thinks he might become a problem in the future. After that situation, his phone starts ringing. Looks like they found the person who had been spreading the rumors. This person was even reselling our hero's guides. RNC thanks them for the help, promising to reward the people who discovered this. Starting with the guide for the Land of Bones. Upon seeing the content, Lin's group goes into a frenzy. With that, RNC asks his followers to keep supporting him, starting by deleting all of the scammer's posts, promising punishment for anyone who had used his content. Those who pirated his guides were certainly not happy at that moment. Some were even defending the person who had resold the guides. But our hero remembers all the effort he put into creating those guides, which ended up generating even more online supporters. People now prefer to buy the content directly from a legend. Lin keeps reminding people of all the benefits of being in the original guide group. Our MC highlights the importance of creating countermeasures against scammers, thus securing his high income. With that situation handled, Lin checks his status. And here, we can observe all of his attributes, but something catches his attention right in the middle. There was a very strange warning sign. His awakened skill was now eligible for an upgrade to level 2. Lin goes for 750 intelligence points and then distributes the rest into agility, spirit, constitution, and strength. The MC decides to contact Zhao to buy priest gear. Considering the available options, Lin chooses a weapon and a pendant. He also grabs some forging stones to upgrade these items to level 10. RNC just couldn't tell him he was getting ready to clear the Land of Death dungeon. Jay realizes he shouldn't ask questions and only informs the total cost, 2,400,000 bashu. Thus, RNC acquires the pendant, the necklace, and his staff. Wasting no time, he starts forging this gear with the goal of bringing all of it to level 10. And so it was done. All of our catastrophic priest set was at level 10. Leaving him very satisfied with the results so far. With that, Lin believes it's possible to achieve an SS rating in the land of death. While taking care of his affairs, he notices someone approaching. It was Mumu passing by completely soaked. Upon realizing she was seen, Mumu becomes extremely embarrassed. She explains that she used the MC's shower because hers had no hot water. Lin, flustered, asks if she wants him to check her shower. Mumu says it's not necessary, and that actually she needs to talk to him about something. This makes our hero curious. Mumu then asks for a second to gather herself. She says she's worried about Bai because her class doesn't match her awakened ability. Lin is surprised since he thought Bai was doing really well wielding that huge sword, but he says he'll think about it and ask Huang if there's a way to change her class. Mumu says that was all and then says goodbye, but our MC realizes that wasn't everything. Lin asks if Mumu has something else to say. Mumu confesses that she does, but she doesn't want to be laughed at. She wants him to promise not to laugh. Mumu says she's worried because they're drifting apart more and more ever since her dear friend and companion had his awakening. She remembers how close they used to be and how they did all sorts of things together. Mumu says she's realized she's not very useful to Lin, expressing her concerns about not wanting to become a burden to the group. Our MC says she's just overthinking things, but she replies that he's incapable of knowing what it feels like to be left behind. Our hero replies that if that's the case, then she needs to try harder to become stronger. Mumu is shocked hearing all the things she's supposed to do. He goes on to say that she needs to train her agility to improve her reflexes. Then he decides to help by giving her the heart of the giant, asking Mumu if she knows what it does. Lin believes that this will be a huge power spike for Mumu. She gets excited and says she'll even give up her snack. And since she has to train more, Mumu asks Professor Lin to test the potential of her bionic tears. She then climbs on top of our NC, telling him to enjoy the little fight. The scene cuts to our lovely warrior, Bai. She finds her happy duo. Worried they're planning to go into the dungeon, Bai asks if it wouldn't be better to rest. Lin receives Bai's buff and says he's already rested enough. Then, using the stone sword key, he opens a portal to the land of death, choosing the highest difficulty level, Catastrophe. Amazingly, Mu is still surprised by his choice of difficulty. That was a dungeon recommended for level 15 to 25 professionals. Our MC prepares with his awakened skill reversal, causing his healing ability to alert legions of skeletons. In the blink of an eye, several enemies were already in front of him. In this dungeon, there's a built-in helper, the holy sword carriage of red flames. But our MC doesn't want to clear this dungeon the easy way. Besides, one of the requirements for an SS score is to not use that sword, so our reverse priest uses star reversal, hitting all those monsters with an area attack. The creatures are confused to see themselves being affected by fire. Lin follows up with his healing combo. Catastrophe descends, annihilating the undead legion and dealing 1304 damage. The stat boost from his gear had exceeded expectations. A new wave of monsters rushed toward our NC. He then thinks about his party members, so he uses an item that buffs his movement speed and starts sprinting through the undead, aiming to reach the other side. Our hero then uses the reversal, Blue Ocean Wave, creating a literal wave that sweeps up his enemies. All the enemies caught in it were hit with debuffs. Lin already had everything under control. In front of the altar of death, the giant zombie boss appeared. Saying he only needs 30 seconds, our hero starts his offensive. He commands his minions to attack the boss, while he himself targets the altar of death. Lin successfully destroys the altar. The boss is also under control. Then our priest decides to finish it off. To Lin, if you know what you're doing, catastrophe level isn't as terrifying as it looks. Our MC then summons the dark cursed knight, causing him to transform into a flying creature, allowing Lin to quickly move to another part of the dungeon. He finally arrives at the place he wanted. There sat the dungeon's great boss on his throne. It was the Skeleton King level 15 alongside the Undine Lich, also level 15. But it was still a 2's2 and Lin gives the order. His summon tries to talk to him using a few words which throws him off a little. He then asks his reliable summon to defeat the enemy while preparing to act himself. One of the duel bosses makes a terrified expression. The Knight summon had already launched toward them using full moon dash with a healing skill combo from our NC. The monster hordes were also present. However, they were no issue for the Knight summon Aelin. Seeing it couldn't win, the duel boss calls for help from the other one. While preparing to rise from its throne, the reverse priest was already behind it, saying that its opponent was him. Then Lin uses his skills, dealing damage to the boss. On the other side, the knight summon was doing a good job too. That duel boss was no problem at all for it. They were basically punching bags. The attacks created a curtain of smoke, but the boss still hadn't been defeated. It reacted by using a skill called Black Hole with a green hue. The knight summon dodged it instantly and then began analyzing the situation. Its opponent was also using an ice-type ability. But using Moonlight Assault, the knight summon split its enemy in half. At that moment, the boss started chanting a spell. As its body began to regenerate, Lin warns his summon that the boss is about to self-destruct, and so it does with an explosion of ice element. In the end, it was encased in a coffin of ice, but the summoned knight was already in another location. That self-destruction had been a completely useless move. Lin also prepares his attack. While being defeated, the boss warns that the true despair was yet to come. A system message stated that the boss had been defeated and the requirements were fulfilled. He then takes the opportunity to heal his loyal subordinate. The summoned knight, now good as new, was very happy. Meanwhile, the death altar had been completely destroyed. The knight summon still had a skill that could perform a summon of its own. Lin then says they need to move on to the next area, so the two proceed with the knight summon. Our NC says there are still 2 bosses left. He was happy with his summon, since it allowed him to ignore the monsters, and the knight gets a bit flustered by the compliment. At that moment, the two are caught off guard by an attack. A dragon launches a series of freezing attacks. The MC warns his summon that they've been discovered. The battle had now begun against the level 15 boss, Death Dragon, and beneath him, the silhouette of another boss called Death Maiden. Lin then tells them to get ready. He performs an area of effect skill combo. Maiden was furious for being attacked in such a cowardly way, so she retaliates with an arrow. But our catastrophic priest wasn't worried at all. His knight had successfully dodged the attack, and Maiden believed Lin had been hit. He actually went all in. Maiden's attack ended up healing him. She couldn't believe her eyes. So, to better understand the situation, she sends her companion in first. The dragon then breathes a blast of ice, but all of those abilities only healed RNC. While analyzing the situation, our knight was already closing in on her. He charges toward Maiden while she tries to defend herself with a counterattack, but she was being pressured. She couldn't let the knight get any closer, so she summons hordes of undead to protect her. That didn't seem like a problem for our knight, and using just one skill, he wiped out the undead and struck Maiden. She was already down to less than half her health. However, Maiden uses a magical vampirism skill. The knight continued his relentless attacks. Maiden tried to call him a traitor and placed a mind control seal on him. The command of the seal was for the knight to self-terminate. The seal's effects could only be broken if Maiden were defeated. That situation was convenient for her, as all she needed was time. With that, Maiden takes the chance to strike the knight, inflicting damage and multiple debuffs on him. Worried, Lin tells him to switch to defense mode, so the knight summons a gigantic shield. However, Maiden wasn't concerned. The knight had already taken heavy damage and was stacked with debuffs. With that, Maiden was already celebrating her victory, imagining herself dealing with the next enemy. At that moment, our MC uses his suppression skill. Lin wielded command on the battlefield, placing both bosses under his control and healing his summon. Maiden didn't know what that was, and she couldn't understand how the knight was still alive. He simply ignored her words and, without wasting time, charged toward the next boss. Lin didn't want to waste time there either. The two then secured the complete destruction of the dragon boss, leaving Maiden completely shocked. She accused the group of having no honor. Lin then decides to finish her with Catastrophe Descends. To cover more ground, the two decide to handle opposite regions. After destroying the altars, the dungeon wasn't much of a challenge. At that pace, the duo could clear the dungeon in under 1 minute. That would be enough to meet the 2-hour requirement. The system message then announces they completed the first of 4 tasks, but something worried Lin at that moment. The system stated that a winged angel, Kuru, would descend for the 5th task, giving him the option to accept grace and leave the dungeon, and a second option to eliminate Kuru's projection that would guarantee a score beyond SSF. Our MC didn't even know a score higher than that existed. Lin concludes that this rank didn't exist yet because humanity wasn't strong enough for it. Otherwise, it would be impossible for no one to know about this new rank. A majestic eye begins to stare down at the duo, causing the summon to retreat from the battlefield. Lin, impressed by the pressure of that energy, wonders where Kuru's projection is, and then a figure appears. That was the projection of Kuru, whose level could not be seen. Kuru praises our MC's efforts in dealing with those demons. Our hero asks if Kuru doesn't have a reward for him because of that. However, Kuru becomes extremely irritated by the question. Not wanting to be questioned, Kuru simply prepares to attack. The MC didn't expect angels to be so arrogant. Understanding the situation, our MC gets ready for battle, saying he won't let his achievements go to that angel. Kuru replies that he should be grateful to serve the Almighty. Lin attacks him without even letting him finish the sentence, saying he doesn't need to hear any more of his nonsense. Kuru responds with holy powerfall, creating a spectacle of lights falling from the sky. But our priest dodged it with relative ease. The battle went on for a while longer, and our MC was still managing to dodge all those attacks. The angel used a skill that exposes weaknesses, and in the blink of an eye, he was already behind Lin, lending a direct hit to his back. However, that attack had its damage reversed. That left the boss completely confused, saying that cheap tricks wouldn't work on him. So the angel switches to a flashy attack, healing her MC by 2641 points, and then using star reversal, landing a clean hit on the angel. He kept acting arrogant while firing off attacks. Lin now thought he wasn't as intimidating as he seemed. The angel couldn't understand why neither long-range, short-range, nor magic attacks were. To Lin, it wasn't confusing at all, especially if you'd seen the previous fight. The angel even considers that the priest might have some invincibility ability. Our MC says that's exactly it, and the most he can do is mess up his hair. The catastrophic priest then uses Blue Ocean Wave. On top of dealing damage, the boss was hit with multiple debuffs. Next, our MC uses Catastrophe Descends, striking the angel with a devastating attack. Finally, Kuru fell to the ground in disbelief at what had just happened to him. Looking down on him now was RMC, who then finishes off Kuru's projection, earning the diamond treasure chest with Baya's buff and other insanely good rewards. Lin begins analyzing a unique type sword. It had characteristics of devouring and transformation with the following available forms: destruction, redemption, moonlight, and embedded with the skills Oath, Seaman, and Silent Destruction. Not least of all, it also possessed the Rift Moonshed mode. What caught his attention the most was the blade's potential to grow. Our MC also received 20 extra attribute points and a few other items. Putting all the points into intelligence, Lin was now on par with a level 20 professional. He had completed his first major objective so far. With Bai's buff still active, he considers challenging another level 10. Outside the dungeon, someone was apparently waiting for him that caught our hero off guard. The guy tried to attack him with a spear, claiming that Lin had ruined his reputation. Our MC thought he had already dealt with people like that, the kind who resell his guides and spread nasty rumors about him, but the chubby guy still believed he was in the right. Unwilling to back down, he charged again at our priest. At that moment, our MC felt demonic energy coming from him. Lin managed to dodge the chubby guy's attack, but apparently he still had a lot of energy left. The demon who made the contract with him had warned that he wasn't ready, and that he was just a pathetic idiot. A joke to everyone. The chubby guy declared he was determined to eliminate the NC, while the massive corruptor said he was the only one the chubby guy could trust. So the weirdo begged for more power. Lin identified the monster as an abyssal corruptor. Our MC then tried to bring the chubby guy back to his senses. According to Alliance law, you may use legitimate defense to protect yourself from demonic entities, even if the person was corrupted unintentionally. The chubby guy used horizontal/sword aura. Lin had been affected by the abyssal invasion, causing him several debuffs. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, our priest decides to act using flashing moonshade drawblade. Despite everything, our hero regretted this happening to the chubby guy, and his opponent was still insane. The MC thinks there's no need to use his awakened skill reversal just yet, since the abyssal corruptor might end up analyzing his abilities. The chubby guy was stunned by the damage the priest had dealt him. Lin even mocked him, saying he was holding back his strength, but he hadn't even noticed the extra attributes included in the attack. Our catastrophic priest decides to go in again, reciting a spell to spare Cow's life. Then he commands the demons to fall into the trap. However, apparently, nothing had happened yet. The chubby guy then begins preparing a sinister attack with a corruptor demon's goal being to convince Juan to fall into corruption. It would also be convenient to have Lin fall as well. That way, convincing Juan would become much easier. The chubby guy was still full of energy, but the MC only needed to heal from his attacks. There wasn't much else to be done in the meantime. Lin asks if that is really Cow or the abyssal demon. The demon wanted to end the situation quickly since the alliance was already on its way, but he noticed a certain confidence radiating from the priest. He then decides to propose that our MC join them, and Lin had already been expecting that invitation. So he decides to ask about the benefits of joining them. The corruptor demon then gives a display of power. Our priest says he's impressed, but then brings up the fact that Huang recently rejected his invitation. The corruptor confirms the offer but says Huang still doesn't know what's best for him. Lin says he can't believe he gave such a chance to that ungrateful guy. The corruptor starts recalling that regrettable episode and begins to lose his mind over it. The MC's goal was to confirm if Huang had really been telling the truth. Now he tells the corruptor that this opportunity should have been given to him from the start. The corruptor starts acting with caution. Lin explains that he has already gained the trust of the alliance and holds a lot of influence. The demon asks if he's not just popular. Lin says the popularity is just a front. What he really wants is to bring chaos to the world. This illusion by the filth of the human world, that was exactly what the corruptor demon wanted to hear. He sensed no lie coming from the MC, so he decides to appear in person to formally invite the priest. Believing that their goals were aligned, Lin prepares to receive the demonic power. However, he summons the Blade of Moonlight in its destruction mode. Wielding his blade, our doomsday priest was ready. The demon realized he'd screwed up. Using a combo of skills, stats, and effects, Lin dealt devastating damage to the demon. But it wasn't over yet. Our MC kept pressing forward. The corruptor demon's HP was already halfway down. The MC had a damage buff active and used it to maximize his hit. The corruptor demon couldn't understand how a human could wield such power. Lin used a powerful attack called Disaster Strike. The demon realized too late that this priest was a different kind of human. Our MC says it's too late for him now since he's in his true form. The demon asks if he already knew how his skills work. With a sinister expression, the MC replies that he did. The demon still hadn't given up, but all his attack attempts were dodged, and Lin was already at his back. But the corruptor challenges him to dodge this attack. He was thrilled to have landed a hit on the MC. Little did he know that attacks become healing. Our catastrophic priest then prepares to end it. Performing one of his devastating attacks, the system announced that the abyssal demon had been defeated, and the spoils of that energy were absorbed by his blade. The blade's quality increased as more demons were defeated. And Lin wonders if the blade can absorb energy from other creatures. With the battle now over, people began asking what had just happened there. The chubby guy was just a coughing wreck on the ground. By that time, the city patrol had arrived, demanding that Lin lower his weapons immediately. Our MC simply complies, placing his blade on the ground. The patroller fires his weapon anyway, claiming it was standard procedure. Lin understands that it's their duty. Other patrollers were verifying information, everyone there was just doing their job. Eventually, they discovered that the chubby guy had demonic traces, and the second corpse was, in fact, an abyssal demon. A level 20 demon had been defeated by the professional they were trying to detain, but the patroller found it odd that the demon's carcass remained. Shocked, they then came to a conclusion that the abyssal demon had been defeated by this famous student. The patrol chief then introduces himself to Lin. Juan wants to confirm if he really was the one who defeated the demon. The MC replies that yes, and that student's CAO had been corrupted by him, also explaining how he made the demon reveal its true form to be defeated. The patrol is stunned. They didn't even know that was possible, an accomplishment that even top-tier professionals couldn't pull off. He even managed to preserve the corrupted student's life at 1% and a measurable force and surgical precision. With that, the other patrollers start questioning the need to take him into custody. The chief says it's due to the severity of the situation. Besides being standard procedure, Lin only regrets that Bay's buff is being wasted. Our MC says he understands the situation and fully supports the patrol. At that moment, the chief shakes his head. His superior had suddenly arrived, saying there was no need to take Lin into custody. Wang says he's just following the usual standard protocol and that he'd be punished if he made exceptions, but his chief assures him that nothing will happen to him. Scarface informs that Lin has earned the pass to the Forgotten Nest. Wang now realizes that the reputation of our catastrophic priest isn't just a rumor. The NC then asks if he's free to leave, and Scarface responds yes, and that if he ever needs anything, just get in touch. Juan apologizes but says he has a question. He asks if what happened here has any connection with Juan. Lin confirms that yes, this is the same big demon that visited Juan. Scarface recognizes the big demon as a major corruptor. Our doomsday priest explains that the big demon believed Huang held a grudge against him. Scarface then says goodbye, thanking him for the valuable information. But Lin had a question to ask, though he wanted a bit of privacy to ask it, so Scarface orders the patrol to secure the area. They obey and begin clearing people from the scene, ordering the public to leave that location. Wang then hands a device over to Lin. Scarface activates the confidential mode. Lin comments on his incredible blade and its power to absorb demonic essence. Wang's chief is shocked upon hearing that. The MC says he wants to learn more about weapons that can evolve through devouring. Scarface says that's extremely rare information, as very few weapons have been cataloged. But he confirms that these weapons gain XP by killing monsters in dungeons, not in the real world, which means our MC's blade is truly unique. Once again, Scarface thanks him for another valuable piece of information. Lin says he believes more equipment like this will eventually appear, giving humanity more means to fight demons. Scarface says this should be information kept secret because powerful groups with money could cause problems and that it would be wonderful if the world shared Lin's vision. He then says he will report the entire situation to the highest authorities within the Union. He comments that after the test, the Alliance is likely to come looking for Lin. The conversation goes on for a while, and at the end, Lin shakes hands with Juan, who returns the gesture, saying he hopes Lin joins the Union. The scene shifts to another location where the topic of discussion was our catastrophic priest. There, it was unanimous that Lin was the most talented rookie of the moment. Even surpassing Mr. Shang, it was hard to say, but judging by Lin's operational style, he was a lucky young man with infinite potential. While the conversation unfolded, something dark was happening. A black stain opened a rift out of nowhere. Creatures began whispering that Mega was dead. This information caused a stir in the other world, and even down in the depths of hell, Lin was still the topic of discussion. The scene cuts to another location. Lin had just arrived home. Mumu was apparently waiting for him, planning to surprise him. But just as she was about to act, our MC had already noticed something was going on. So right away, he tells Mumu that he can see her. She gets upset, saying he should at least pretend he didn't notice her. Before Lin can scold her for slacking off, Mumu reveals she's already level 10, and he really wasn't expecting her to level up so fast. Full of herself, Mumu expects praise. Then the MC asks if she stayed up all night grinding, but Mumu says it was little Mumu who did all the work for her. Lin is confused, but she explains that it's her summon ionic tier. Basically, Mumu could let her copy level up for her, gaining XP automatically without lifting a finger. He finds it absurd that there's no range restriction on it, and that it can even clear dungeons with 0 input. Mumu confirms, saying she's currently in the locked Less Nightmare dungeon. Both get pretty excited since they can even monitor the fight. Lin admits he's even a little jealous, asking if the copy gets tired. Mumu thinks that's a dumb question, but Lin replies that he's just impressed by Mumu's versatility and awakened ability. So he decides to update Mumu's progression plan, explaining that now he needs to find an optimized way for her to level up. Mumu says she's going to send him all the data. However, Lin brings up her body fat, which obviously leaves Mumu instantly irritated. The clueless priest explains that being in shape affects attributes. While the two argue, the clone was doing its job. Lin continues explaining that attributes make a difference in high-level dungeons. Even after hearing that, Mumu says she doesn't understand what that has to do with her body measurements. Changing the subject, Lin asks if Bai wanted to change classes, but Mumu says she would also feel uncomfortable sending her own measurements. And Mumu was also outraged that the MC wanted another girl's measurements. She has an angry outburst and storms out immediately. Lin just wanted to help and doesn't understand why she acted that way. And even while upset, Mumu was getting ready to take her own measurements, telling herself it was all for the sake of getting stronger. But she was still nervous about doing this for him, so she was debating whether to send her actual measurements. She thinks a lot about it and starts measuring her melons, worried that they hadn't grown enough. Mumu wonders if Lin would laugh at her because of that. But in her medical exams, she had always given incorrect info. At that moment, she remembers her clone, the little Mumu, and thinks about using her measurements instead. The timing was perfect since her clone had just finished the dungeon. And there she was, the small but mighty Mumu, asking what her master wanted from her. Super excited, Mumu starts taking measurements, making a lot of noise while doing it. Our MC starts wondering what's going on with all that ruckus. Mu had finally gotten the measurements she wanted. She wonders if something's wrong because of the confused look on Lin's face. He says that a bust measurement of 80 doesn't seem right. Mumu insists those were the results of her last exam, but Lin says that if the data isn't accurate, he can't make a proper strategy. Very annoyed, Mumu snatches the paper from her teammate, scratches out the top numbers, and writes new ones underneath. Lin says that now the data looks more accurate. Our NC then asks if she contacted Bai, and Mumu informs him that she refused to change her class. Bai also didn't want to bother her boss after everything her beloved boss had already done for her. Mumu also says Bai wanted some privacy with her data, but the MC starts getting suspicious of all that talk because knowing Bai, she probably just didn't want to cause trouble. Still, Lin can't just sit back and do nothing. They're teammates. At that moment, Mumu mentions a talent, saying her clone learned a talent called soul summoning. Our MC is stunned when he hears that because it would be like putting the game in auto mode. Mumu points out a few differences. Spirits can't be considered alive. She says she doesn't have more details since she hasn't tested it yet. Lin then suggests going to a dungeon to run some tests. The scene cuts to the secret dungeon of the lizards. The system informs that it's a hard difficulty dungeon recommended for levels 8 to 10. Lin's new weapon catches Mumu's attention. Our MC says she can give it a try if she wants. Suddenly, he strikes Mu with an attack, causing a regenerative effect. Rushing off the demonstration, Mumu tells her clone to do something. She commands Bionic Tear to use its exclusive skill, Soul Summoning. Then her clone starts holding a bell, and the system notifies she's using Soul Summoning Bell. Our reverse priest focuses all his attention on it. Little Mumu had summoned the Giant Tree Guardian, a massive level 10 summon. Lin observes that this summon has stats equivalent to a top-tier boss. As she levels up, Mumu would have the potential to summon even more powerful beings, which is incredible considering her clone doesn't even have a cool-down time, making that ability nearly divine in level. He asks her to test out her skill then. Mumu was already super excited to do so. She orders her summon to eliminate the small lizards. The pack of lizards gets ready to charge. The great tree shows disdain, calling them ants before unleashing a devastating attack, which was its ability called Heaven Strike. The giant then tells its enemies to rest in peace. Heaven Strike is similar to Goblin Ray's skill, but with a much larger area of effect. The MC asks a bear if it can fight against something like that. Mumu doesn't like the idea one bit since that was her teammate, but Lin was actually referring to Bionic Tear. Mumu's copy is caught off guard by that. Right away, Mumu says absolutely not. But to our reverse priest, it doesn't make sense since she can just revive. So he changes his mind and asks Mumu to let him handle things for now. Lin then moves to the front of the team, jumping over the gigantic tree. Now it was his turn to fight the lizard men. He notices he wasn't defeating those monsters in a single blow. He was running some tests while taking down the lizards. Mumu was impressed by the power of his basic attacks. Lin was just testing the bonuses of his spectral blade and wind shade. He realized that the higher the attack speed, the better. And for monsters that ignore physical damage, he still had his healing ability. This gave him the perfect combo to defeat strong enemies. With sharp eyes, our MC continues training, now using Moment of Silence Destruction. That combo dealt devastating damage. Mumu noticed that her partner had grown even stronger. Mumu's copy asks the Great Tree to help defeat enemies. Lin thinks that's a good idea and decides to focus on healing. Now he changes his blade form to Salvation. They were in the middle of the lizard tribe with countless enemies. More than 300 lizards, all level 10 and above, his familiars prepare for the attack. The great tree charges in first, unleashing a devastating area attack. Moo and her copy are not far behind. Meanwhile, Lin provides support to the rest of the group. He uses the summon of illusory living water, granting his team a healing buff of 521 every half second. All that battle had attracted the lizard leader. Moo's copy asks the great tree to begin its charge, then it uses Desperate Blow. Lin is impressed by how self-sufficient the bionic tear is. He also notices that the only weakness of the tree is its mobility, but he had already completed his analysis. So Naogi also decides to go on the offensive, immediately defeating the lizard leader. The tree finds Lin's power oddly familiar, so the great tree decides to check something. For some reason, it drops to its knees. Lin realizes that this is a guardian that truly exists in another realm. So unlike other summons, if it dies, it can't be revived. That great tree was like his cursed knight. Our priest decides to break the silence by asking what it wants, asking if the tree could pose a threat to humanity. The tree asks if he can take its master to the Forgotten Den, because Lin carries a mark that grants an access to that place, just like its former master once did. The tree explains that its former master was her. While it now calls itself merely a summon, Lin then asks the great tree to rise. Our MC says he needs to check something before answering the great tree. The dungeon had already been cleared, so the MC tells him it's time to move on. But Moo notices something is off. In his mind, he's concerned about AWAKEN talent control, remembering that summons disappear when their professional master dies. So he starts thinking about Moo's copy. She has the same privileges as a real professional, wondering what she truly is. All these mysteries raise concerns about humanity's safety. Our MC tells the girls to go ahead and complete other dungeons because he has something to do. He then takes one last good look at the bionic tears. Moo asks what he's planning to do, and Lin replies that he just wants to take a break for now. The MC decides to make a phone call. The scene cuts to a building in the city of Jingyang. Our MC had gone to meet with Huang. Lin asks if Huang is aware that he has permission to enter the Forgotten Den. At that moment, Huang replies, asking if it's about the lack of information on that dungeon. Our MC realizes he went straight to the point. He also asks Huang that he prefers that he take the test first, before challenging the dungeon. Huang then takes a deep breath, saying that Lin isn't aware of how hard that dungeon truly is. Scenes of difficulty far beyond anything he's seen before. But even with all the casualties, top professionals keep going there for the rewards. Defeating its boss grants you a legendary tier equipment. And if someone manages to get an SS score, they can even obtain mythical tier gear. However, arrogance, thinking you're the strongest in the world, can get you killed in a place like that. The MC then asks what level is required to enter. Juan replies that level 15 is the minimum and 20 is the recommended. Lin thanks him, saying there's no need to worry because he's more prepared than Batman. Changing the subject, Juan comments on the problems that the abyssal corruptors are causing, mentioning a fallen one called White Clown, and that professionals have the obligation to deal with it. Soon there will be a plan, and Lin should pay attention to phone calls. Meanwhile, some measures like arresting suspected corrupted individuals and putting the city on alert are being taken while the professional exam hasn't arrived yet. For now, Lin should focus on the professional exam. Our MC says he understands and that he has one more question. He wants to know if summons from other realms could end up betraying their summoners. But Huang says there's absolutely no chance of that happening. Lin makes a surprised face hearing that, and Huang explains that talents are like a part of your own body. Just like they live, they also die with us. Huang says this has even been tested on other occasions. Now our MC wants to know what if the summon is a demon from the abyss, and Huang tells him there's already a case like that, where the summon has helped humanity in various ways. Lin explains that his doubt comes from a situation within his own team. He mentions that a summon made a request for him to enter the Forgotten Den. Juan looks shocked, asking if that summon actually had the pass to get in. Lin replies yes, saying it didn't seem like a lie. Hearing that, Wang tells him not to worry since the summon wouldn't betray a teammate, because the summon originates from a talent, not demonic power. After hearing all of that, our NC says he understands. And since Lin had no more questions, Wang asks him something. It was about the incident with Migo. After examining the cause of death, they found it was a magical attack. He had been burned to death and his organs stopped functioning. Wang then asks if his talent might be anti-healing. Our MC doesn't deny that it could be something like that. Hearing this, Wang says it's been a hot topic of discussion. The examiners haven't stopped debating the cause of Migo's death. Lin is left without much to say about that. Moving on, Wang asks if he's aware of the Abyssal Demon bounty rewards. The Alliance is willing to reward all professionals who defeat Abyssal Demons. There will be a ceremony to honor him for his achievement, where Lin will be able to choose from the available rewards. Their conversation comes to an end, and Lin says he needs to go clear a few dungeons. Huang then wishes our MC good luck on the exam. If he manages to take first place, he'll be the pride of Jingyang City. Our MC says he'll do his best. Lin suspects that Huang might even be betting on that outcome. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye-bye.